Hi, it's Dre Griggs with Obsidian Wisdom. Today I share with you how to maximize your retirement savings with these simple steps. Today we'll go over 7 simple steps that you can enact today to make sure that you maximize your retirement savings. The first strategy on our list is to leverage your tax advantaged accounts. This is one of those things that we often don't think a lot about taxes in retirement, but Uncle Sam has been waiting patiently for him to be able to tax your 401k, your 403b, your 457, all of your pre-tax plans, which means you want to have a strategy in place that allows you to control as much as you can. Because currently that's going to be taxed at your normal income tax rate. And if you leave all your money in your pre-tax account and you start stacking that with your social security and your pensions, and then you have the RMDs, it can really move you into a lot higher of a tax bracket. Which is why for most people, it makes sense for us to find ways to start taking money out of these pre-tax accounts before I have a lot of these required minimum distributions, which now take away my flexibility. If you've ever watched any of my videos, you know that I'm big on flexibility, you having the ability to choose exactly what you do with your money. For us to have flexibility and freedom when it comes to our tax advantage accounts, we want to explore doing Roth conversions, and we're normally going to be considering that for 2 types of situations. The first one is called a backdoor Roth, and that's a very fancy way of saying that we just don't qualify for a Roth. We make too much money, we're above the limits, and so as a result, the only way that I can take advantage of that tax-free money in retirement is for me to do what's called a backdoor Roth. So I take the money from inside of my 401k, my IRA, my other pre-tax accounts, and I roll it over into a Roth. And I know what you're sitting there thinking. You're thinking, Dre, you just said that I don't qualify for a Roth. So how am I going to qualify? By converting my traditional IRA into a Roth IRA. And I know it's one of those things where I sort of feel the same way too, where you're like, hey, wait a minute, you just said I couldn't do it. But this is totally legal, it's totally fine, and it's actually a great strategy. So what you would do is you would actually look at whenever you have your low income years. And so that number can range depending on what you normally pay in taxes, but I've seen it where people will set it at maybe like 20%, 22%, and that anytime their taxes would be below that number, they would then do a backdoor Roth for whatever the amount needed for them to be at that 22%. The idea is if I'm having these low income years as I'm either near retirement or I just started my retirement, that I can give myself the same taxes that I'm already used to paying. And as a result, now I'm converting a lot of these pre-tax accounts into a Roth, which gives me a couple of advantages. Number one, I've increased my flexibility. I'm no longer required to take that RMD, that required minimum distribution. I don't have that anymore. I've already paid the taxes on this, so Uncle Sam's not bothering me. Number two is this is tax-free income. So now as a result, when you retire, this money isn't something that you have to worry about from a tax consideration. This is just money that you get to spend, which I think is pretty cool because that is the goal of retirement is I want to have the money to enjoy myself. I don't really want to have to be considering taxes a whole lot. And then number three, when I do these Roth conversions, this could also play a role in the next strategy, which is maximizing Social Security and pension benefits. Well, if I'm doing these Roth conversions, I may be able to bridge those years where a lot of people hear the idea of, well, I don't want to take Social Security early because I know that the number increases by about 8% every year. Whether I'm going to wait for my full retirement age, which for most people is going to be 67, or even if I want to wait until 70, where I maximize how much I receive from Social Security, I have to have some sort of an income coming in those years. By having those Roth conversions during those low income years, you're not stacking on your Social Security on top of these amounts. If you're among the 20% who has access to a pension plan, you have a pretty big decision. You get to decide whether you want to take the money out in a lump sum or whether you want to have some sort of an annuity payment for the rest of your life or for 10 years certain, 20 years certain, or joint rights of survivor, which is a very fancy way of saying that the pension is going to pay out the rest of my life and my loved one's life. However you design it, you have a pretty big choice. If you're someone who wants to have access to the money because you want to pass the money on to your next generation, then it may make sense for you to take out the large lump sum. But then you have to ask yourself, how comfortably am I investing that money? Do I think I'm going to be able to live off of this 3%, 4%, 5%? And will I be able to generate that much of return in the stock market? That is one of the things that we don't have to consider if we take it out in an annuity payment. They're going to pay me for the rest of my life as long as that company exists. The only thing that you then have to consider is, does my amounts go up with inflation? For many that have those older pension plans, they do have cost of living adjustments. They do go up with inflation. But those that are retiring where they've been adjusting that out, I see more and more pension plans where they don't have any cost of living considerations, Well, you and I both know with inflation, about every 17 and a half years, that means our purchasing power cuts in half, which is a very fancy way of saying that what I could buy with $2,000 a month now, I would need 4,000 a month in 17 and a half years to live the exact same lifestyle. Well, if your pension does not increase, that means that that $2,000 that you're receiving now, which funds your retirement very well, in 17 and a half years is only funding half of your retirement lifestyle, which is going to be a very big concern for many people. So when you're deciding whether or not you want to take that large lump sum or the annuity, we really have to look at all of our income sources to see where that fits in. And we really have to take a step back and look at what our dream retirement looks like. What are the goals that we're trying to accomplish? And then we can pull the levers that accomplish that goal. Number three on our list is you want to optimize your asset allocation and rebalancing. When we're looking at asset allocation, there's a certain amount of risk that we're willing to take. There is a risk and reward that we always need to consider. As we near retirement, we need to really be thinking hard about how much risk we want to be taking. Because for most of us, we know that the stock market goes up. I can show you chart after chart after chart where over the long term, the stock market typically goes up. Now, because there are those negative swings, we have these really volatile short term moments where there could be a recession or a depression, and there could be a chance for us to lose up to half of our retirement savings. Where we don't have the ability to wait that additional 5 to 10 years for our portfolio to reaccumulate and to rebuild itself, we can find ourselves in a really hard place when it comes to our retirement. The beauty of a strategic asset allocation is it gives us the ability to limit a lot of that risk as we're nearing retirement. We don't have to go all safe where we're not even keeping up with inflation, but we're not trying to hit home runs either. But we could probably build a very nice and consistent portfolio where we're probably generating somewhere around 4 to 5%. This gives us the ability for us to withdraw our money in most circumstances, and we're still able to maintain that principle where we don't have the risk of running out of money in retirement. If we're able to manage the risk with a particular asset allocation, and I'll put a link to a video where I go through a few of those diversified portfolios. But for example, I enjoy the golden butterfly. I like that portfolio a lot. Manages the risk, but I'm not too conservative where I'm barely keeping up with inflation. And it has an asset allocation that performs well in a variety of economic climates, which is basically what we're looking for. We want some assets that perform well in times of economic growth and times of an economic recession. We want some that perform well in times of high inflation, and we want some that perform well in times of high deflation. But the only way we're going to be able to do this is by having a particular asset allocation that is strategically designed to achieve that goal, which then leads us into rebalancing. The only way for that asset allocation to actually work is for us to periodically go in there and rebalance our portfolio. Now, I'll put a link to another video where I go through 3 great rebalancing strategies. But what you really want to think about, am I simply going to be rebalancing once a year, once a quarter, once every 5 years? Or am I going to be rebalancing in more of a tactical approach where I have certain industries that I'm investing in? So I'm investing in the healthcare industry and the industry sector and emerging markets. And then as certain economic conditions happen, I know that I should probably change my investments. That if we're going into a time of recession, for example, we know that consumer staples normally perform pretty well. People still have to buy toilet paper and toothbrush and toothpaste and food from grocery stores, that we have to have certain things no matter what. We also know that travel and leisure probably doesn't perform very well in times of a recession, because if I have to cut my budget, that's probably where I'm going to be making these cuts. So we'll be normally decreasing our portfolio position when we're taking a look at some of these consumer discretionary spending. Discretionary spending normally goes down in times of inflation. Now, you could get really tactical where you actually look at what's causing the recession. And for example, if COVID is causing a recession, well, what industry was performing very well because of that recession? And if you said healthcare, you'd be absolutely right, because that's what everybody was shut down for. Everybody was shut down because of that. So if I'm able to invest in some of the industries that are profiting from the recession, because spoiler alert, everybody doesn't lose money in the recession. There is always someone that's performing really well when someone is losing their shirt and everything else. So this last recession, which was the COVID recession, there was a couple industries that did really well. Healthcare was one of them. We know that they were giving out the vaccines and everybody's going to the hospital and buying all this other stuff. But also you notice that Zoom was doing really well. And so there was this whole subset of an industry that, well, people aren't allowed to go out of their house. All of a sudden, that means that Zoom's doing better. That means that Roblox was doing better. Okay, there are certain industries always that perform well when you know exactly what's causing the recession. So if you want to be very tactical, which is not going to be for most people. But if that's something that you enjoy doing, then that's something to look at. What's causing the recession? Who benefits from it? Have you ever heard those old movies where they say follow the money? It's kind of like that idea, right? Where you just want to follow the money. There's always someone profiting from every event. And I know it may even sound a little cynical to say it, but I'm simply acknowledging the economics of the situation. Money doesn't disappear, it just kind of gets reallocated. If you made any argument, you would make that money appears, that we have banks and the Federal Reserve just printing money. So money appears. Don't even get me started on fractional banking. But the idea is, if I'm interested in being tactical, there is a great opportunity for me to profit in every economic climate, which is a great way for you to maximize your retirement savings. The next strategy is tax efficient investing. And all we're really saying is we consider our investment allocation from a risk perspective. We consider it from a time horizon perspective, which is how long can I leave my money invested? But we don't always consider it from a tax perspective. Where is my money at? Do I have some money that's invested in municipal bonds? Because I can generate some tax-free revenue from that. In addition to investing in municipal bonds, because of the fact that they don't normally have as great of a return, even though I'm able to generate tax-free revenue, sometimes what we'll do is we'll change the asset location. Then what we'll do is we'll put tax inefficient investments inside of our tax advantaged accounts. So you may decide that tax inefficient investments that are just taxed as ordinary income, like income from your REITs or bonds, we will place those inside of your 401k and your 403b and other pre-tax investment accounts. So that way I'm able to take a tax inefficient investment and give it a tax benefit by putting it inside of a tax efficient wrapper. And in the same way, you would take tax efficient investments, for example, like an index fund, and then you would have that in your taxable investment account. And the reason we would do that is because we know that we will have a much more favorable tax rate as far as capital gains are concerned. So then there's no reason for us to put that in a tax efficient wrapper of your 401k or 403b or something like that. Another tax efficient investing strategy would be tax loss harvesting. And all that is I take some assets that are already losing money and I sell them at that loss. And then I take that loss and I use it to offset my gains. And this is something that can be coordinated with your overall asset allocation. It's a nice way to limit and control what your taxable income is going to be if you're trying to control your tax brackets. And if you're able to sell some of your investments at a loss, ideally it's going to take you out of some unfavorable positions. Maybe something happened in the market, but then you don't allow that to go to waste. You instead use those losses to offset your gains, which is going to be pretty nice as far as just your overall portfolio. Because if I'm able to take a loss and use it, think of it as a business. If you invested in your business, you're able to write that off as a loss, and you don't think of it as, oh, I lost, it didn't work for me. Well, why is that? Because I'm investing in my overall strategy. I know that if I'm able to invest in my business, that yeah, maybe it didn't happen this year, but I know that if I allow it to keep growing, that it's going to benefit me in the long term. Well, your investments is a lot of the same way. You're investing in these different companies, and some of them work and some of them don't. Sometimes we literally have an asset allocation that we know that a portion of our portfolio is not going to perform well because we're managing the risk. And as a result, if we're able to use that part of the portfolio to offset some losses, why not? Now, of course, it has to be done in coordination with your overall investment strategy. But if you're able to limit some of the taxes, that is a great way to maximize your retirement savings. Number 5 on our list is I want to be able to take advantage of catch-up contributions. And all your catch-up contributions is when you're over 50 years old, you have this ability to invest more than what everyone else is able to invest in. Now, this number can vary. So for example, in your 401k, you're able to invest 23,000 inside of your 401k every year at any age. Well, once you're over 50, you get the catch-up provision where you can invest another 7,500 inside of your 401k, which brings you to a total of $30,500. Inside of your Roth and IRA in 2024, you're able to invest $8,000 combined between the two of them. But then you have the additional $1,000 as far as the catch-up provision. So now you're able to invest $9,000 between the two of them. You have these catch-up provisions that you can take advantage of once you're over 50. And inside of your pension plan, there's normally some catch-up rules where you can take advantage of the last 3 years before your retirement, where you have this ability to really inject a lot more money into your retirement plan. And it normally lines up pretty well with people because once we're over 50, our kids are gone, they're self-sufficient, and we don't really have to worry about this as much anymore. And I'm getting out of debt and I'm starting to get more disposable income. Well, if I'm able to add some of this money, it's just as it sounds. I can catch up on some of the lost time because I was doing a lot. I was paying bills. We had a house. We had all these moving pieces. I didn't have as much money to be able to allocate towards my retirement. Number six on our list to maximize your retirement savings is taking advantage of your health savings account. Now, for you to be able to take advantage of a health savings account, you have to have a high deductible health insurance plan. If you have a high deductible health insurance plan, your health savings account is a great way for you to fund your future healthcare expenses in retirement. Your health savings account has the triple tax benefit, which means that you put the money in without it being taxed. So it's in pre tax. You grow the money without it being taxed. So it grows tax deferred. But then if you withdraw the money for health expenses, then it's withdrawn tax free, which means that this is actually one of the very few ways that you can generate a retirement income without paying taxes on it ever. You heard that, ever. So your HSA is considered the triple tax benefit. That's because the money goes in pre-tax, the money grows tax deferred, and then the money is distributed tax free, which is pretty nice. If you're able to put the money in here, so I believe in 2024 is $4,150 is what it is for an individual, or $8,300 for a family. You're able to put that money inside of this HSA every single year. And if you're able to do that from 50 to 65, you have a very nice little nest egg. You can then use that money on any health expenses, including your long-term care, and you have a self-funded long-term care plan. Now, one thing to note is if you turn 65 and then you apply for Medicare, that's it. You cannot have Medicare and a health savings account. So just so that you know, whenever you decide to activate your Medicare, then the health savings account is done. They don't talk to each other. They're not friends. They're like frenemies, I guess. I don't know. It's just a part of your overall plan, but it is a great way for you to maximize your retirement income. Our seventh and final way to maximize your retirement savings is estate planning. When you look at estate plan, there's a few things that we need to consider, but we're really just saying, I have this wealth. I have successfully been able to build this retirement savings. How do I ensure that this money goes towards the causes I believe in, supporting the people that I love? And there's a couple things that you could do. Some of them we can start immediately. Example would be your annual gift exclusion. In 2024, it is $18,000. So you can give $18,000 to your loved ones every single year without having to file any gift tax forms. We also have the ability to put our money inside of a trust where I don't want my family fighting over my assets, but I'm not 100% sure what I want to do with everything. But if you sit down and design a trust, it really helps you flesh out a lot of these ideas. Who do I want to give things to? Do I trust all of my children? Do I want to make sure that there's some rules in place that will minimize the chance that my kids just blow through the money? Because we do know that 70 to 90% of generational wealth is lost by the third generation. So if you're able to put a trust in place that maybe has the kid, they have to go to college, or they can only take out so much money for a variety of reasons, or you can make sure that your spouse is taken care of if something was to happen to you. There are so many goals that you can accomplish with a trust, but it gives you also just that peace of mind of knowing that everything that you desire to happen is basically set up in the best way possible. Now, it doesn't mean that it's 100% slam dunk that it's going to happen that way, but it does mean that you gave your family the best opportunity to set your estate up in a way where you've protected your family from creditors, you've limited taxes, and you've kept the arguing to a minimum. And for many, charitable giving is something that they consider. If you have a church, a synagogue, a mosque, a nonprofit that you just really support, what happens when you're gone, right? Are your children going to keep giving to them? Because we don't really know if that's going to happen. Or we can set up a charitable remainder trust or donor advised funds where we can make sure that those causes that we were advocating for, the ones that we're very passionate about, that they're able to be taken care of when we're gone. Just whatever that looks like, whatever amount that we want to design it, we have that flexibility to design it, which for a lot of people feels really good as far as maximizing retirement savings, because we're trying to accomplish the goal of making sure that you don't run out of money. We're trying to accomplish the goal of making sure that your healthcare is phenomenal. And we also want to make sure that you are living your dream life in retirement. Well, once we check off all three of those boxes, for many people, they don't want to just give everything to the government. They don't want their family to fight over these different assets. And so you want to sit and really hash out a plan for your estate. Are there trusts and causes I want to support? Are my kids of age for them to even accept the money? Is it something that I don't think they're going to be interested in maintaining? Like, we have a farm and I think that my kids are going to sell it, but I don't want them to sell it. Is there one kid that we feel confident won't sell it? Because we could put the farm in the trust, and then you can have income from the trust, pay the other children, and then the kid that we trust to keep the farm will get the farm out of the trust once the other children have been paid off. There are so many things that we can do if we give ourselves the time and the flexibility to design it that way. When you really take a step back and answer that question, how do I maximize my retirement savings? What I'm really hoping that you notice is it's not about the basics anymore. It's not about just investing a certain percentage of our money. It's about how do I optimize my investment strategy? How do I optimize my tax planning strategy? And how do I optimize my estate planning strategy? Which is why, for most people, to optimize their retirement planning strategy, it makes sense to reach out to a professional. If you're someone who is interested in having a conversation to just see what it would look like, then I invite you to go to obsidianwisdom.com/wealthy to learn more. Until next time, stay safe and enjoy life.